Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How Do You Hackathon? Open Austin promotes civic development and social change. Our host is Chris Metcalf, Director of Developer Experience at Socrata. He is going to be joined today by Claire Dunn, the lead organizer for the ATX Hack for Change event, and Chip Rosenthal, Chair of Open Austin. This was an interesting hackathon because it paired civic development with social change to create apps and other things for social justice. Again, thank you for joining us today. Let's get started.
Thanks for coming. I think the ATX Hackathon was also pretty awesome because it's part of National Civic Hacking, which is a big yearly nationwide collection of hackathons with a lot of different goals and a lot of different topics. So I think it's awesome to see a hackathon within the context of the larger event too. So Claire, Chip, I'm going to hand it off to you now and let you guys get started, and then I'll come back with questions at the end.
Well, thanks so much for the introduction, and thanks for having us on here today. We're really excited to be able to share some of the lessons that we learned in this new model of hackathon that does have more of a social change aspect added to the civic development. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll give a little bit of background on our event. The event started with the first annual National Day of Civic Hacking in 2013. So this was our second year, and we had a great team of organizers that brought both Open Austin volunteers, which is the Code for America Brigade here in Austin, Texas, along with staff at St. Edward's University, which was also the location host. We also had support from the local hacker community, leaders from meetups and former hackathon evangelists, including Keith Casey, who served as our Master of Ceremonies for the weekend. Overall, the event was 2 days of more traditional hackathon, team building, project development, scoping things out, and actually getting into code. But what made our event really special was that we had project leaders, whom we refer to as champions, bringing in project ideas from both the civic and the social good side of the space. So moving on to speak a little bit more about the blended approach we took here. St. Edward's University, where I also work, is focused on issues of social justice and making sure that we provide students with a lot of opportunities to engage with the community and get real life experience trying to, achieve these goals. So we felt from St. Edward's that we wanted to be more involved than just providing space. The IT department here as well is very focused on engaging with the thriving tech scene that Austin is so lucky to have. And we saw this as a great opportunity back in 2013 to serve as a connector between the digital creatives that Austin has so many of and our healthy population of nonprofit organizations. So working with community engagement leaders and just kind of the existing connections that we had in the community here, we just started talking to different nonprofit leaders, social innovators, and trying to get them on board with this idea that they could really benefit from a hackathon, which is traditionally not something that many nonprofit organizations are involved in. So we started that process in January of this year in full earnestness, and we've tried to blend that in with the more traditional civic hacking side of especially the National Day of Civic Hacking. And Chip and Open Austin were able to really energize the hacker community early on in the process and curate some really special projects. So Chip, if you want to speak a little bit about kind of the civic approach to this event.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Chip Rosenthal. I'm the chair of Open Austin. We are a community volunteer group formed in 2009 to advocate for open government, open data, and civic technology. Around 2012, Austin became a Code for America fellowship city, and Code for America also launched its brigade program, and we were in the inaugural class of the brigade. So we've been around doing advocacy and hacking for several years, but as a very small grassroots volunteer organization, no paid staff, there's limits to the abilities of what we can do and the kinds of events we can sponsor. So when St. Edward's approached us about this notion about having, a large event anchored by the National Day of Civic Hacking, we were really excited by the opportunity and really fortunate to find such a well-positioned partner to help us with this. So we've been moving forward now for 2 years with this event, and really excited by this notion of being able to do work for both some really great civic and social projects. Claire, do you want to talk a little bit about the kinds of projects we saw at the event?
Sure. We had, let me move on to kind of the breakdown while I'm talking about this. So we had, when we say social good focus, that primarily is referring to projects that came out of nonprofit organizations or people with ideas for more nonprofit and social good organizations or ventures. So an example of some of these would be, we had a nonprofit organization called Urban Patchwork, which supports urban and community gardens inside the city limits. They reached out to us and we worked together to kind of identify some gaps and needs and existing projects that could have digital solutions. They, in particular, needed a mapping solution for their website just to help as a communication tool and to better serve their users in order to find the information they needed about the local farming community. So looking at the project breakdown, you can see that we brought a pretty well-balanced number, 13 social good focused projects into the weekend and 12 with a more traditional civic focus. And at the end of the weekend, we had 16 projects who had something ready to present. And I think this balance, looking at the beginning and then looking at the end, it's still pretty evenly split, shows that we were able to get a nice mix of people who are passionate to work on the projects, not just you know, bringing the ideas into the group, but really there was a lot of follow through throughout the course of the weekend. I do think it's really interesting to note that some of the social good projects had a higher chance of being successfully carried throughout the weekend, and from some of the feedback we've received as well as observations during the event, you know, we think that this is probably due to some of the leadership that was just innately part of the passion the nonprofit organizations brought to this event. So when we think about the project champions that were providing functional knowledge, when there was an existing organization, you know, an existing nonprofit like Urban Patchwork, there was a greater depth of functional knowledge, understanding of the needs and the use case of the project or solution that the teams were working on. And that was harder to get at when it was just, you know, more of an idea or trying to tackle a civic problem without a City of Austin office or more formal support from the civic side. So moving on to how we got these projects and these hackers involved, we really did focus on ongoing recruiting and marketing efforts surrounding the event, really in some ways starting at last year's event with the 2013. But the outreach kind of started full steam in January this year. So we had a very ambitious and wide-reaching idea of who our hackers were going to be. It was important to bring in and make sure that there was a lot of space and opportunity for the existing hacker community, but we also wanted to make sure we invited not just developers, but writers, designers, database administrators, and so on. So we really had to fire on all cylinders when it came to recruiting and outreach. We were fortunate enough to host a meetup on hackathons for the social good at the annual South by Southwest Interactive Conference in March. And we also had a strong and continuous presence at meetups, different high-profile speaking events, such as the series at Austin Center for Design. And then, of course, Open Austin had a couple of meetings specifically on the hackathon before the event actually took place. We also just took to coffee shops and co-working spaces, which there are many of here in Austin, to make connections and just, you know, be known, garner enthusiasm and participation, because this event was still very much in its growing stage this year. So that worked great, and we had 2 times as many participants in our second year, which really fed to the strength and the robustness and diversity of skill set on each project team. As far as bringing in the project champions, and I'll speak to both the civic and social good side, but Chip did a lot more work on the the civic side, so he can speak to that. But we did reach out to existing connections through the university and through Civic offices. We had a number of existing relationships to work with for this. Previous year's participants really helped with word of mouth. But we also had some new faces in City Hall, primarily our new Chief Innovation Officer, who really helped rally the cause forward. And I'm proud to say that we had a record of 7 offices from the City of Austin involved, bringing project ideas and the ability to actually follow through. We also worked, similar to how we tried to bring in hackers, we worked at co-working spaces that focused on social entrepreneurship and social innovation to make presentations to these resource-strapped nonprofits who really were going to benefit from the weekend the most. And a good deal of that work was just defining the concept, defining what organizations could get at it, and then working to make these ideas at the appropriate size and scale for a 2-day project, and helping them identify on the front end what were their technological resources, what were their limitations, and what were the use cases of their targeted need, so that it would be more clearly articulated to the hackers at the weekend and we wouldn't lose much time. So Chip, I'm going to hand it over to you now to talk about the source of the projects and the breakdown that we see here on this pie chart.
Great. So I thought it would be instructive to do a bit of a data dive looking into where our projects came from and what the outcomes for these projects are. And I was hoping that by looking at this information, it would be instructive in terms of, what worked, what we need to do more of in the future, things we may want to adjust. And so I'm going to be focusing here on the Civic projects, not that we don't love all of our little projects, but Open Austin's focus was on trying to bring in these Civic projects to the event and hopefully shepherding them forward to success. So what you should be seeing on the chart is that of the 25 projects, they were fairly evenly split between what we call civic projects and the social projects, 13 social, 12 civic projects. First, I'd like to talk about the yellow slice of pie in that chart. And you may be saying, what yellow slice of pie? And I say, exactly. Our initial strategy, as Claire said, we were out at the beginning of the year trying to recruit projects to this event. Did a lot of meetings and interaction with city departments trying to generate project ideas for the events. After all, in a city like Austin, the data and the needs are down in those departments. And so, we went out to them and tried to advocate the ideas for the hacking and bring data, bring projects to the event. It'll be awesome. And as you can see, the result of that was really 0 projects coming in from that avenue, which had us a little flummoxed because that was, up until that point, our main effort and our kind of focus for trying to get projects to the event. So we fell back and recalibrated and realized, look, we're going to have to adopt a number of approaches. So one of the things we did is, rather than going down to the departments, we met directly with our partners at the city, and this tended to be folks like the Public Information Office, the IT department, the New Innovation Office, that may not possess the data and the specific applications, but they were already our partners in the open government effort and understood what we were trying to do. And, we worked with them to try to bring some projects to the event, and they were able to come up with 4 ideas through these existing relationships. Another thing we tried is reaching out to our community. We set up a GitHub repository. If you go to the Open Austin GitHub repo, you'll see a Hackathon Ideas project. And we invited people to submit projects there. Just a simple text file, 1 per project. We opened up a comments thread. And then we had a meeting in advance of the hackathon where we asked people to discuss the projects. And as a group, Claire and her team identified 3 slots for Open Austin to fill. We actually came in with 4 projects via this mechanism. And the final source of projects is the website itself, the ATX Hack for Change website. There was really good direction and an intake process for people to sign up with interest, register a project. Claire would reach out to that person. Well, Claire and her team would reach out to them and try to bring those projects into the event. So our initial effort by working with the department that had the data wasn't particularly fruitful, but fortunately we were able to fall back and identify a number of approaches that brought in several projects. So some of the key takeaways here I see are it's important to use diverse methods. Some will work, some won't. 25 projects is quite a high bar for an event, or at least it is for us, yet we were able to do it by bringing together a number of sources. Another is that we discovered that you really can't do that pitch for hacking and recruit projects at the same time. The folks that we were able to recruit projects from, already got the civic hacking idea. The other departments, we gave them the pitch for civic hacking, so maybe next year there will be sources of projects. So in the end, you have to leverage your existing partnerships and your networks and your community to get these projects. So out of those 12 projects, I'd like to look at what happened to them. And so 6 of those projects ended up with prototypes that were presented at the end of the hackathon. 2 of the projects, I would say, were really scoped out with a weekend's worth of work, and they were able to be substantially completed. And so they have prototypes there, and we're working to deploy them. In fact, one of them, we did some data enrichment on a data set, and we had the city department, 311 department, with us, and they actually did a data load from the St. Edward's campus during the event to upload our data. The other project that substantially completed was particularly interesting because it was a non-code, non-design project. These were some folks doing some technical writing and help people use our data portal, and so the tech writers spent the weekend aggregating some content, and we're looking forward to getting that published. 4 projects did go to prototype and presentation at the event, and I would say, as is typical in a hackathon, they really need further work to advance to deployment. And fortunately, all 4 of those projects are being advanced. And if you want, maybe we can follow up in a little bit and talk about, time permitting, some of the ways we're able to do that. So 6 of the 12 projects kind of met the conventional success criteria for a hackathon. There was prototype, and at the end of the weekend, they were able to present. I'd like to look at the other 6 that may not be considered quote-unquote success by classic terms, but we're going to see some interesting stuff there. One of the projects was unable to advance the prototype. They got into it, found out, hey, we just can't do this project. There were some issues, there were some APIs and some data that were needed from the city that at that time just weren't available to be successful. So maybe by conventional terms, you might not frame that project as success, yet the knowledge that was accumulated and the ability to identify, look, this is what we need, this is what we could do if we had this information, was very powerful and I would say valuable. That was the 7th project that did present during the final pitches. So even though they didn't have a prototype, there was really some valuable outcomes from that. There were 3 projects that did not get a team. So the idea is at a hackathon at the beginning, you do your pitches, people who want to work on the project sign up. Projects that get volunteers advance, those that don't get volunteers may not advance or get combined with other projects. 3 other projects did not get volunteers, yet the champions were so committed to those projects, they continued to work on them. They took advantage of the networking opportunity and the expertise available in the room. And so they were able to do a number of things. For instance, one of them, our web manager just sat down and entered all of the city's data sets into the OKFN data census, and now we're listed, where before the weekend we weren't. So even though that is not a classic hackathon success where there was a prototype and a presentation, the fact that there was this milestone achieved, I think, is really significant, and that is the case for all three of these. And two projects simply did not get volunteers and weren't able to advance further, and some of those functions were merged into other projects. One of the things that's interesting is the could not prototype one project and the no team but project advance anyway 3 projects. Those were the 4 contributions that came from our partners at the City of Austin. So one of the things I've been thinking over is I'm wondering if there might be an impedance mismatch somewhere between what a hackathon does and kind of what the needs of these city proposals are. Clearly there's a need and clearly there's something we can do to advance these projects, but I'm wondering in some ways if there might be some better ways to move them forward, other mechanisms besides hackathon. One of the things that I want to highlight in this analysis is that maybe we need to broaden our definition of success. Where it's 6 of 12 met the traditional definition of hackathon success, it prototyped and presented. We're really looking at 10 to 12 having very significant outcomes, and 2 of 12, the projects didn't advance, but hopefully, some of those ideas got incorporated in other projects, and they were able to move on quickly. A final point that I want to make is that I think one of the things that worked for us really well is from the beginning there was this notion of we needed to hack this forward. This was a weekend event, but whatever was come up with during that weekend, it needed to move forward in order to be successful. So that's why, for instance, I'm really excited that those 4 projects that were prototyped, had additional work to do, are undergoing active development at this time. We had an Open Austin meetup last night and got updates from 3 of those 4 projects. So it's really exciting to see the benefits of this hackathon continue and in not being this ephemeral one-day sort of thing. So that's the summary I wanted to present. Claire, do you have any final comments?
No, I think now we can kind of turn it over to the questions and see what else we can cover here in the last few minutes.
So, okay, the first question we got from Chris Matthews was, we wanted to know if anything new was pitched at the event itself, any new ideas that hadn't been brought up before.
Actually, no. We had the 25 project cap on the event, and we hit that in advance of the morning that we started. So this was kind of different from traditional hackathons where people show up with ideas and pitch them, but we really wanted to make sure that the teams that formed had the best chance of being on a successful project team, and that's why we put in this project curation, project and pitch development process, so that on Saturday morning when everything got started, people came in knowing what projects they were going to hear about because we were able to publish them to our website in advance of the event. And also everyone felt prepared to tackle the project at appropriate size for the weekend. So every project that was pitched, we had worked with either through Chip or through me before the event got started.
I'd like to add that we did do that traditional hackathon pitch in 2013 where we went around the room, people stood up, had 30 seconds to pitch their idea, and then we voted. We put for people to vote. And I think we had a lot more success with the outcomes and a lot more engagement in 2014 because of this curation effort. And that's something I would absolutely want to do again.
Yeah, I would agree. Given my experience with hackathons, they tend to go a lot better when you have good ideas that are pre-curated for developers to work on versus having to come up with them on the fly, and it helps you really get in to solve those community problems too. So the next question that was asked was, what do you do differently next time given what you learned from this event? So it sounds like you learned a lot in 2013. What do you do differently in 2015?
Well, let me offer something here. I think one of the big differences between 2013 and 2014 is, at least on the Civic side, there was a strong effort on this hack it forward ethos. Actually, I think there was throughout the whole event. The difficulty, I think, is that we have some infrastructure on the Civic side to hack it forward after the event. We've got Open Austin and the Brigade, and we've been leveraging those resources to try to keep those projects moving. I know some of these social projects are moving forward, but there isn't quite the same sort of structure and support community around it. So one of the things I'd like to say is that I would hope if we do it again in 2015, we also build some support structures to hack it forward after the event for these social projects.
Yeah, I completely agree. We did a lot of work developing resources, plans, kind of a structure and process around curating these projects for the social side of the set, but we didn't really have enough time to plan for how to support them after the event. So that's a goal for next year to build up that infrastructure.
Awesome. So it sounds like that structure to bring those apps forward and make them more sustainable is one of the big goals. I think that's an awesome goal to have. It sounds like one of the other things that made you really successful was connecting up developers and nonprofit and social justice advocates in the community. What advice would you give to someone who wants to link up developers and community members for a hackathon or a contest?
I think the best kind of starting place is to start with the nonprofit organizations, because you can find people who do have passionate interest in tech solutions, but maybe haven't thought about how they can get that access. And then, we had a great turnout just at our meetup during South by Southwest. We had very high-tech people who wanted to, use those skills to support nonprofit organizations, and we also had a couple of, more, nonprofit social justice leaders coming saying, hey, how do I get help? I think just creating, whether it's a hackathon or a meetup or, just, cocktail hour, having that space and inviting people on both sides of the table to just meet together and adjust expectations going into it is a good starting place, just to get the conversation off the ground.
I agree. I think that's awesome. I think that we need to see more hackathons doing that kind of connection, that kind of networking.
Can I add something to that? I think it's really important, particularly in an event such as this, that you differentiate yourself. Hackathon is becoming a very popular thing culturally right now, and in a lot of times what's being called a hackathon is not really embracing the same kind of values and outcomes that these civic and social events are. So I think it's really important as part of your messaging that you differentiate yourself, and hopefully that will become attractive to people if they want to get into that kind of event. I also think that might be one of the reasons why we had such a diverse population participating in this event. That was a really exciting thing to see.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. I think one of the unique aspects we have doing civic hackathons is that social good aspect. And I think that's something that social good and community, and I think that's something that gets ignored in a lot of these more corporate hackathons that you're seeing pop up. So I think that definitely when you market your hackathon, if it's a civic hackathon, you need to really pump that part of it up. And I think that attracts a different crowd and a different attitude, and I think that they're a lot more interesting, a lot more fun in my experience than the big corporate ones.
Yeah, and I will say it's a very high-touch process bringing those groups in, but if you can attract the diversity of causes, we had a pet-focused one, we had, transportation, we had sustainable food, that will bring more hackers to the table as well, because it's something they're already passionate about.
Definitely. I love the passion of the open data community. So I think that's it for the questions now. So we're going to bring the event to a close. Thank you, everybody. You have a great day. Thank you for attending.
Thanks, all.